Welcome to Graveyard Mile, where the past never stays buried, and every story has a chill waiting for you. If you love late-night mysteries, haunted places, and spine-tingling legends, you're in the right place. Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a walk through the shadows. It was 11:48 p.m. when Nora flipped the open sign to closed and exhaled for the first time in hours. The espresso machine hissed behind her like an exhausted animal. The smell of burnt coffee and disinfectant hung thick in the air, the scent of endings. The coffee shop sat at the edge of downtown, the kind of place that looked cozy during the day, but unsettling after midnight. At night, the windows turned to mirrors, the world outside a smear of streetlights and reflections. She always told herself that closing shifts weren't so bad, that she liked the solitude, the rhythm of wiping counters and stacking chairs. But lately, something about the silence after dark made her skin prickle. Her manager had left an hour earlier, promising to make it up to her next week. He never did. It was just Nora now, keys clinking, floor sticky, rain starting to tap against the glass. At 12:03, she killed the lights, slipped her hoodie on, and stepped into the cold. The bus stop was half a block down, a lonely shelter under a flickering streetlight. Rain slicked the sidewalk, and cars hissed past in sheets of water. Nora stood under the awning, hugging her bag close, earbuds in, but no music playing. She noticed him almost immediately, a man sitting at the far end of the bench. Hood up, still as stone. She assumed he was waiting for the same bus. Nothing strange about that, until she realized he hadn't moved once since she arrived. Not a fidget, not a glance. Then she felt it, his eyes, watching. She turned slightly, pretending to check her phone, but his face was aimed directly at her. Pale, gaunt, his expression unreadable, as if studying her, memorizing the angles of her face. His eyes were the kind that didn't blink enough. Her heart picked up. She told herself not to be paranoid. Maybe he was high, maybe tired. Just wait for the bus. The bus arrived 10 minutes late, brakes squealing. Nora climbed aboard, taking a seat near the front. The man didn't move. Relief washed through her, until the bus pulled away, and she looked back. He was still sitting there, head tilted, watching her leave. The next morning was Sunday. The rain hadn't stopped. Nora worked the opening shift this time, 6 a.m. to 2. She told herself she'd forgotten about the man. But when she walked into the cafe, her chest tightened, because through the window across the street stood someone who looked exactly like him. He was leaning against a lamppost, hood up again, half hidden by drizzle. Her co-worker, Dana, was restocking pastries. "You okay?" she asked, noticing Nora pause. "Yeah," Nora said quickly. "Just tired." But every time she glanced toward the window, he was still there, unmoving, watching. By noon, she almost convinced herself she was imagining it. Then, just as she turned to ring up a customer, Dana muttered, "Weird guy out there, huh?" Nora froze. "You see him too?" "Yeah," Dana said, frowning. "He's been out there like an hour, just standing, maybe waiting for someone." But by the time Nora dared to look again, he was gone. That evening, Nora rode home in a cab. She wasn't taking the bus again, not tonight. Her apartment building was small, 6 units, old red brick, the kind of place that smelled faintly of dust and radiator heat. She lived alone on the second floor. Rent was cheap because the landlord lived out of state and hadn't renovated in decades. She climbed the stairs, jingling her keys, and almost laughed at herself. The whole thing had probably been nothing. Just some guy hanging around. Maybe homeless, maybe lonely. She'd been working too much, that's all. But when she turned the corner to her hallway, her heart stopped. A man was standing outside her door. It was him. For a second, they just stared at each other. He smiled, small, too familiar, too confident. "Hey," he said. "Funny seeing you here." Her mouth went dry. "Do I know you?" He chuckled softly, as if she were joking. "You're Nora, right?" She froze. "How do you?" "I live right across the hall." He gestured vaguely to the apartment opposite hers. "Just moved in. Thought I'd introduce myself." But Nora knew that apartment was empty. It had been empty for months. The landlord had even said so when she'd renewed her lease. Across the hall, she repeated, stalling. Yeah, room 2B. Her stomach turned. That's not possible. His smile widened, like he was enjoying her confusion. Sure it is. You'll see me around. And then, without waiting for her response, he brushed past her and stepped inside her apartment. Hey, wait. What are you doing? She snapped, heart hammering. But he was already inside, glancing around like he belonged there. Nice place, he said calmly. Smells like cinnamon. Get out, Nora said, voice trembling. You can't just. He turned, head cocked. Relax. I'm just saying hi. I said get out. For a long second, they stared at each other. His eyes flicked to her hands, maybe checking if she held a weapon. Then, slowly, he smiled again, softer this time. You don't have to be scared. I'm harmless. I'm not scared, she lied. He stepped closer, and she flinched back. His voice dropped to a whisper. I like your hair, better down. That broke her. My boyfriend's on his way, she said suddenly. And my roommates. They'll be here any second. A flicker of something passed through his eyes. Doubt, maybe. Or irritation. He looked toward the door. You have roommates? He said quietly. 3 of them, she said quickly. Big guys. You should go before. Before she could finish, footsteps echoed in the stairwell outside. Someone was actually coming up. He stiffened. Guess I'll see you later, he said, voice suddenly calm again. He walked to the door, opened it, and stepped into the hallway. Instead of leaving the building, he crossed to the apartment diagonally opposite hers, 2B, and went inside. The door clicked shut behind him. Nora locked her door, slid the chain across, then dragged a wooden broom handle across the bottom of the back door, the one that opened to the fire escape. She started doing that months ago after watching a video about break-ins. It made her feel safe. Or it had. Her hand shook so hard she could barely hold her phone. She dialed 911. The dispatcher was calm, professional. Can you tell me what's happening? Nora explained. The man, the bus stop, the cafe, the hallway, how he knew her name, how he'd gone into the supposedly empty apartment. Officers are on their way, the dispatcher said. Stay on the line if you can. Outside her window, the rain had stopped. The night was deathly still. Somewhere below, a dog barked once, then went silent. Every creak in the old building sounded like a footstep. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, a knock. Police. 2 officers, one older, one younger, stood in the doorway. Nora's story spilled out between shivers. They exchanged a look. You said he went into 2B, the older one asked. She nodded. The officer knocked on the door across the hall. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Still nothing. He glanced back at Nora. You said you've never seen him there before? Never. That apartment's been empty for months. He tried the doorknob. It turned easily. Stay here, he told her, and they stepped inside. From her doorway, Nora could see just enough. The flicker of their flashlights, the stale air wafting out, the faint smell of mildew, and something else. Something foul. Then came the younger officer's voice. Sir, you should see this. A pause. The sound of boots on dusty floorboards. The scrape of a door opening. When they came back out, their faces had changed. There's no furniture, the older one said quietly. No bedding. Just. He hesitated. Just a pile of trash, food wrappers, and women's things. Makeup, hair ties, a couple of photos. Of you, I think. Nora's stomach dropped. What? He's been squatting here, the younger one said grimly. For a while, by the look of it. The officers swept through the rest of the unit. In the kitchen, they found a stack of empty coffee cups, cups from her cafe, with her handwriting on the side. In the bedroom closet, a small stool positioned beneath a hole drilled into the shared wall, right where her own bedroom was. He'd been watching her, listening. Holy hell, one officer muttered. You said he knew your name? That tracks. Ow, she whispered. The younger cop pointed toward a crumpled sheet of paper on the floor. On it were scribbles, her schedule, written in different pen colors, as if updated over time. Looks like he's been keeping track of your shifts, he said. Maybe followed you home from work. Nora's legs felt weak. She backed into the doorframe and slid to the floor. The older officer crouched beside her. We'll get a statement, ma'am. But for now, I want you to stay somewhere else tonight. She nodded numbly. Of course. The next morning, The sun looked wrong, too bright, too normal. She stayed at Dana's apartment, clutching a mug of untouched tea. Police had confirmed it. The man had been living across from her for weeks, maybe months. He'd broken in through the back door of the vacant unit. The same back door her apartment shared access with on the fire escape. That's how he'd known the layout. That's probably how he'd unlocked hers, too. They said he drilled holes in the wall. Dana whispered, horrified. Nora nodded faintly. I used to think the pipes were just noisy at night. I heard things sometimes, tapping. I thought it was the heating. They both fell silent. He hadn't been caught yet. The officers said he'd likely slipped out while they were still downstairs, maybe through the basement exit. He was just gone. Time blurred after that. Nora took time off work, changed her locks, moved in with Dana temporarily. The landlord promised to board up the empty apartment, but she never went back to see. Some nights, she'd wake up certain she heard footsteps outside the door. Other nights, she'd dream of the man sitting on the bus stop bench, smiling faintly through the rain. The police called once to say they'd found fingerprints, but no match in the system. Probably transient, they said. Nothing to worry about. But she did worry. Constantly. She started taking different routes home, avoiding the cafe after dark, scanning every reflection in every window for a hooded figure standing too still. 3 weeks later, she returned to her apartment to gather the last of her things. The air was stale, thick with dust and memories she wanted to forget. Boxes stacked by the door. Empty shelves. She moved quickly, keeping her phone flashlight on even though the power was back. As she was packing the last box, she noticed something strange. The wooden stick she always wedged under the back door was missing. Her chest tightened. She checked the lock. It was secure. Maybe the police had removed it during their search. Maybe the landlord. Still, she grabbed her things and hurried toward the front door. Then came the sound. Knock. Knock. Slow. Deliberate. She froze. It was coming from across the hall, from 2B. Her breath caught. No one was supposed to live there. Not yet. The landlord had said renovations would take months. The knocking came again. 3 taps this time. Then silence. She reached for her phone, hands trembling. But before she could dial, a voice came through the door, low, almost amused. Miss me? Nora ran. She didn't even stop to close the door behind her. Down the stairs, out into the street, lungs burning, pulse in her ears. A neighbor shouted something as she passed, but she couldn't hear. She didn't stop running until she was 3 blocks away, under a streetlight, panting like a hunted thing. When she finally looked back, her building loomed in the distance. Silent, ordinary, windows dark. Nothing to see, no movement. But she knew. Somewhere behind one of those windows, someone was watching her leave. She never went back for her things. A month later, the landlord called to say the police had searched the building again. Apartment 2B was empty again. The only sign of life was a single coffee cup sitting on the floor right by the hole in the wall. Written in black marker across the cup were 3 words. See you soon.